Let's watch A Change Will Do You Good. Discover how Greg Mitchell, the director of cinematics at the acclaimed studio The Coalition, was able to overcome obstacles and create the story sequences of the new Gears of War and its DLC Hivebusters in real time with imperceptible for key transitions. Hear about the challenges, the motivation behind their decision, and the obstacles they faced. Let's welcome Greg Mitchell, Cinematics Director of Microsoft.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you, Nivi. I appreciate it very much. I'm happy to be here today. I'm excited to show this presentation to you, so I'm going to share my screen and let's get going with it.
Perfect. We are excited too. The screen is yours.
Thank you. All right, welcome to my presentation, A Change Would Do You Good, going real time in Gears 5. Again, I'm Greg Mitchell, the Cinematic Director at the Coalition Studio. We're a studio with Microsoft and with Xbox, and I've been working on Gears of War now for about 15 years. And Gears of War is one of the most celebrated sagas in video game history. It launched to critical acclaim in 2006, defined the first generation of HD gaming, and went on to become a billion-dollar franchise with being enjoyed by 45 million players worldwide. And here you see the title, you see our different titles there, including Gears 5, which is what I'll be talking about mostly today. We also launched Gears Tactics about a year ago, and then later on Xbox in 2020. And then also our Hivebusters DLC launched in December, which was an expansion pack for Gears 5. Again, my focus today will be on Gears 5, but I will touch a little more on Gears Hivebusters afterward. So I'm going to back out of sharing my screen for just a moment to talk to you about what's top of mind right now. And that's kind of a moment where I get to say that you know, life has been interesting. You know, it's a moment of transparency where I can say that I'm so happy to be presenting and be part of the big festival this year. I really appreciate being here. It means a lot that I've been able to go out and share stories of making Gears of War for so long and all across the world. I'm very thankful to be speaking for all of you here today. Unfortunately, I'm not at a podium, not on a stage. I'm not there in person with you. I'm right here in my office in this little box. And I'm talking to a camera, but I know you guys are out there. And I did everything I could to try and rearrange my room to make it interesting for you. So my desk is off to the side, my notes are over here. It's not perfect for presenting, but this is kind of the world we're living in right now. And so with that, I'm gonna share my screen, back to sharing my screen one more time here. What I'm trying to say is that I wish I could be there in person. I really do. It means a lot when I get to travel and go talk about my experiences with making these games. And actually, what's interesting is that I actually have been able to visit Brazil before. This is back in summer of 1996. I was there working with a video production crew. They were shooting videos on sport fishing in Brazil, catching peacock bass and piranha. So I got to see some of the beautiful wilderness out in the Amazon. And see also some of the other areas of Paraguay and Argentina along the way. So I'm thankful I had that opportunity, but I definitely wish I could be there with all of you now. And what can I say? The pandemic has changed everything, and it's changed everything for the foreseeable future. And that's kind of where we're at right now is that we're in this mode of change. You know, there's no way I can encapsulate how COVID has affected everyone, from personal tragedy to health, to our relationships with one another and our work relationships. You know, we can't deny the worldwide impact it has had. It changes our way of life. It changes how we interact. It changes how we work. It changes how we play. You know, we used to do this stuff in groups, and now we're doing it in these little boxes, unfortunately. But that's life right now. You know, this is our reality, and we have to learn how to evolve, how to work, how to collaborate, and even how to socialize. And how long is this going to last? Well, we really don't know. And I think we can't deny there's going to be permanent changes because of all this. You know, working from home or working remotely is one of those outcomes, I think, that's coming from all this. So right now, what are we having to do? We're having to accept this. We just have to accept this. Now, I'm going to step away from the pandemic talk. It's just something I wanted to get out there. It's something we're all dealing with right now. We've been dealing with it for over a year now. But I want to talk about change in general. You know, change or evolution is a part of life. It's happening all the time. And sometimes it's hard when we're comfortable with what we're doing to sort of change our ways. We get set in our ways, you know, but it's important to realize how we handle change, you know, and how we accept it. You know, it makes a difference in how we're going to let it either affect us or how it's either going to propel us. And that's what I want to talk about then, like embracing change, because if we embrace change and embrace change that's happening to us, we can actually learn and grow from it. We should look for what those benefits are in change. And along with that, then I'd like to see where, if we're embracing change, and how can we influence it? How can we instigate it? How can we be the change? And that's what I really want to concentrate on today is instigating and influencing change. So this is a story. It's a positive story of how Cinematics team accepted, embraced, and influenced a big change in their process. All right. So with that, I just wanted to lighten the mood a little. And now let's start with the Gears 5 video montage. And just to let you know, all these scenes were captured on an Xbox One X in 4K at 30 frames a second. I'm not really sure what you're seeing on your end. It's being compressed down. It's being sent across the stream. I know frame rate may not be as good, but I'm sure you can go find this on YouTube somewhere. We have very, very happy fans who love sharing this stuff. So real-time cinematics are nothing new to Gears of War. We've had them ever since the first game, but it was new to this team. Real-time was new to the Coalition. So Microsoft bought the franchise in 2014. It was assigned to the Coalition, and they had a cinematic team that was built just for doing pre-rendered cinematics. So with that, the challenge was on for taking this team and getting us to evolve into making one that makes all real-time cinematics. And that's what I'm talking about, embracing a change to real-time. So what I'll talk about is why we chose to go real-time in Gears 5. There's some specific reasons for it, both for the player and for ourselves. We're going to talk about some of the hurdles and some of the problems we had along the way, or the things we had to solve. And I'm also going to show you some of the results. And when I say show the results, I'm actually going to take some videos and let them play through. They're kind of long, but I want you to enjoy them. It's very important for me to share the work that the team has done. I'm very proud of all the work the team did, and I'm always happy to show it off when I can. So I've got a couple of times in here in this presentation to show you that. All right. So let's first talk about a better player experience. So having real-time creates, again, continuity and immersion for the player. Seamless transitions, that's kind of an easy one. That's happening in games everywhere now. It's almost expected. But this is the first time we did seamless transitions for a Gears game, all the way through the entire game. We've done seamless before, but not consistently. So this is our first time to do that, because we kind of wanted that gameplay where the player felt like their character was immersed in the gameplay and then into the cinematic and back. How can we try and do that through either seamless transitions or camera cuts, whatever we need to do? That's one thing we want to make sure we do to kind of create that immersion. Also, player inventory, especially for us, it's our weapons. So whether you're picking something up in an environment or you're carrying a weapon into a cinematic, the last thing you want to do is see a pre-rendered one pop on with whatever weapon they decide to render it in. If you can actually carry that stuff through, it gives a sense of persistence. It makes the character feel like they're gelled with that story when you get that kind of persistence. And then also character detail. So if we actually made customizable characters or skins, and if they're playing that in the game, you should see that in the cinematic as well. Same thing goes for if they went and played in the mud, or they were shooting somewhere in the mud and rolling around, they got mud splotches all over them. You'd want to see that in the cinematic, not have the characters completely clean just because that was the easiest way to render this. No, you like that kind of persistence. That's some of the benefits to the player. There's also better experience for formatting. So for example, if we had a pre-rendered scene like on an Xbox, it's going to be 16:9. But if we had that pre-rendered scene, the same one we rendered for Xbox on PC, and someone had a 29:9 aspect ratio, then we're going to have black bars on the sides. Well, that's not a good experience for the player. What we want to do is be able to fill that entire frame, and real-time allows us to do that. Real-time allows us to actually reformat the aspect ratio and fill the frame so that PC users can actually use the entire monitor and see something clearly. And then also, there's no video compression. So what can we say? Compression sucks. Okay. Truth be told, I fudged up that image a lot to make it look bad, because back 10 years ago, compression wasn't great, but it's gotten much better now. But at the same time, why deal with any kind of compression codecs or how a piece of video might look being played through a device like an Xbox, when you can actually have the same clarity on your cinematics like that you have in your actual game from your game assets? So again, it gives us clarity instead of having to work with any kind of video compression. Okay, so I talked about some of the benefits for the player. let's talk about why we at the Coalition like real time. First of all, when we're shipping on several different products, having scalable cinematics means we can ship on one disk. So if you have an Xbox One or Xbox One X, doesn't mean you have to go find the specific disk for it. That disk will then scale across all those systems. That's easier for us because it means we only have to ship on one disk. And along with that, if we're only shipping on one disk, it doesn't mean that we're having to ship separate movies. So like we're shipping on the Xbox One and we're shipping 1080 movies, we don't have to make a series of rendered movies for that in 1080 and then 4K renders on the Xbox One. So it scales to the device that it's going on. That's a benefit to us. And what can I say? 4K movies, they're huge. That's the first thing we looked at wanting to do real time. We knew we were going to start pushing for 4K, and we knew if we wanted good quality movies, they were going to be big. How are we going to fit all that onto one disk? I mean, we could always probably fit a second disk in there, but the last thing we want to do is have you load content in. Same thing goes for a download size. We don't want some huge download size where you're waiting because you're waiting on these 4K updates to movies. So it's easy for us to keep the size to a minimum and then just put in what we need. Because if we're sharing sets and props and characters with the game, why not just load in the animations and the visual effects and the sound to then drive our cameras, drive the characters, and then play it on in real time? That's a benefit to us because, again, it's less space on disk to put that than put an entire 4K movie. The other thing we get for us is real-time feedback on Xbox. Again, I mentioned about if we did renders, we're having to review that in a room on a screen through a different player, through whatever codec we use. And we can only hope that's going to look good on Xbox. And if we have to test on Xbox through a Bink or however we're rendering it, then we actually have to see how that output is. If we can actually play the cinematic in real time on the Xbox, we get to see what that output is on the device that's being created for. So again, that's good for us because then we can adjust and improve faster, because we're getting to see the output on the device that we're actually creating for. Now, I got to be honest here, we actually did have one pre-rendered scene in the game, and that's the opening credits. The opening credits, the execution of them came in hot. We had a third-party Elastic TV do this for us. And it was going to take some time to get them up to speed how we work in real time for the time frame we had for getting this done. So it's easier for us to let them do what they know how to do best in creating an opening sequence like this and just turn it into a movie file. So this was a 2K movie that then scaled down or scaled up depending on what system it was on. But I do want to come back to this in a little bit because when we were first exploring the idea of opening credits, we actually started doing some visualization with it in Engine. So we were actually doing some real-time production, so to speak, in Game Engine to kind of feel what we wanted to do with the credits. So it kind of helped greenlight this entire credit sequence. So I'll come back to this in a little bit, but at least want to let you know about that one pre-rendered movie we had. Now, I've been talking a lot about pre-rendered cinematics. Let me talk a little bit about pre-rendered playback because it's an important advantage to us. So if we had a rendered scene on the disk, we just stream that disk, that movie off the disk and straight to the screen because we do other things in the background. I like to think of our cinematics as digital curtains. If you're watching a theater presentation and they have to change a stage in the background, they close the curtains, you have like an intermission or you wait, or someone might come and act in front of the curtains and they open them up again, and you have a new set. Well, that's basically what we do. I guess in a way you could say a cinematic is a loading screen. I don't want to think that. I think our cinematics have gotten better. They're not glorified loading screens, but they are there to mask activity that's happening in the background. So if we had a pre-rendered scene happening previously, we'd stream that data off the disk to the screen, and then we'd actually have, you just played level A. We would actually then, while the cinematic is playing off the disk to the screen, you'd have level A being unloaded, and then level B come loading in. So the cinematic was there not only to advance the story, but to let us do some technical stuff in the background. And even in past years, we used to reboot an Xbox just to clean everything out easily. That was just the advantage of having a pre-rendered cinematic. Okay, so what does that mean if we're doing it in real time? Well, it's a different story. We still have to play that cinematic while activity is happening, but now we don't have as much level loaded into the Xbox, and we actually have a section in there that's actually holding the cinematic. So now we're sharing space with a gameplay level with cinematic content that's then being processed and output to the screen at one time. So while this stuff's being processed and output to the screen, we're then unloading a level and bringing the next level in. And of course, same thing, this level can't be as big because we actually have to have room for the cinematic. That's a hurdle for us. That's something we have to work out and how we're going to make that happen. Now, if we're looking at a device, we have not just memory, we have system memory, we have GPU, and we have CPU. And when we're doing this now with real time, we're actually taking up a bit of each one of these. We take up some of the memory. We're actually using the GPU and CPU power to output that stuff to the screen. So what does that mean? That doesn't mean it's just a challenge for the cinematics team. It's a challenge for the entire studio. So when we committed to make our cinematics all real time in the game, that was a decision done by the coalition saying that, okay, we're all on board for this because there's going to be some decision making. There's going to be some push and pull into how big our levels can be, how much cinematic we can have loaded in at the time. That was something we all had to decide and commit to, and we did. So now that we're committed to it, let me talk to you about some of the individual challenges for the cinematics team. What were we up against with this? First of all, our workforce here in the Vancouver area is a lot of contractors, and a lot of those people work in linear content. So with that, our pipeline was still an older pipeline, and part of it's because we were working in a little bit older version of Unreal Engine. We weren't working with the new sequencer content. We're still working with Matinee, and that's okay because our pipeline worked really well for working with linear content creatives and also working with people who can work in Engine. So we had this divided team that worked in linear content, and then it went to Unreal, and we had artists working there, and then of course our output went to Xbox. So our team looked like this. You had storyboards, previs, layout and editing, and animation, all working in Maya, Motion Builder, and Premiere. And then you had another group such as our lighting, our post-process, visual effects, tech art, scriptings, meshing and design, all working in Engine. And there was a little bit of cross-pollination between the two. That's kind of how our team was divided. It worked well for what we were doing, but it's not how we want to work. Ultimately, we want to do this. We want to work like the game team does. The game team starts in a game engine and ends in a game engine. That's how we should be working. We should be starting all of our content, our layout, and our work in Unreal Engine and going out to Maya or Houdini or Pro Tools to do the work that we need to do and bring it back in Engine. That's our goal. We're still getting there, but that to me is our new workflow pipeline going forward. So the first challenge in actually making something like this happen was actually doing it. The team wasn't experienced at making real-time cinematics, so we decided to do one. We reworked the scene from Gears 4 to make it run in real time. There on the left of your screen is what our final render was out of a PC that shipped with Gears 4. And on the right is our test where we had it captured on Xbox One in real time. And if you look, there's not a lot of difference between the two. You can find some details in the effects and some of the lighting, but overall the results are really good. And that's good because this at least gave the team some confidence in doing this, because again, everyone was used to making pre-rendered scenes and having control of getting this content out versus then having to work with all the issues you have with making this work in real time. So again, this was here to kind of test ourselves with something we've done and to also give us confidence. Another thing with pre-rendered scenes that's an advantage for us is large-scale environments. So if we ever want to make something feel big and have a huge scope and cinematic, well, we could take an environment, we could just mesh it out however size we wanted to. That was a benefit of having a pre-rendered cinematic. So then we could have our own custom sets. We could up-res anything the way we liked it. Modify the set to make sure it fits our cinematic, just as long as it stayed in the art style of what we were doing. And we can make them as big and expansive as we wanted because we're going to pre-render this. Well, for real time, we can't do that anymore. So we had to find a new solution. And this is what we did. So there's a little breakdown for you from one of the opening shots in Gears 5. We use matte paintings. I mean, this has been in the effects industry for a long time. And we decided we need to lean on this to create those big, expansive environments and show some kind of huge cinematic scope to make this game feel larger than life than what kind of limitations we might have had if we didn't go this route. So we had 3 matte artists working full time. They were actually doing a lot of skybox and backgrounds for the gameplay levels. And then they actually spent time doing this, making these matte paintings for all of our cinematics. And here's a montage of the results there. And I think they're beautiful. It really, really helped create that size and scale that we wanted in the game. Okay, again, I talked about seamless transitions. Again, this was new for us. We had to find a way in which we were going to start making seamless transitions work in our game, where there's going to be a camera blend or where there's going to be a camera cut. And so we had to start adjusting the way we work, how we're going to board and test these transitions and make them seamless going into a cinematic and out of a cinematic. And sometimes it was pretty easy. We had a cut point in which we could do it, like here where Kate goes and presses a button that we can actually cut to something happening on the door. Those are the easiest ones to do, but still, this is the first time we'd ever done a full Gears of War that had complete seamless transitions all throughout the entire game. And so this was a big accomplishment for the team to try and solve. Talked about this earlier, continuity of objects. And for us, it's weapons. You know, we have over 60 weapons in Gears of War, and the characters wear the weapons on them. So it actually becomes a silhouette of what the character looks like with the weapons that they're wearing. And the player wants to be able to take what weapon they picked up at that time and carry it through the game, carry it through cinematic, and use it in another piece of gameplay afterwards. So we actually needed to find a way of how we're going to manage all of our weapons in the game. And we had to get creative with how we're doing weapon management for single-handed weapons or heavy weapons, because it was going to be hard for us to try and create any kind of consistency or anything that would work for us to actually blend all that each time, you know. So then the two-handed weapon kind of became our consistent weapon to always use and always somehow default to that. We're going into a cinematic. And like, here's an example right here. Here's a scene where the player chose the Lancer for JD to hold. And here's a side comparison where the player also chose a hammer burst. Again, same thing, two-handed weapon, and here also a long shot. So it shows you how, you know, again, having this kind of persistence through a cinematic and then the next level of gameplay is an advantage for the player to where they get to keep their weapon. And at least in the cinematic, we wouldn't take the weapon away from them in gameplay and then show you holding a Lancer in a cinematic and just give you that. We would actually make sure you had the weapon you had, but seeing them carry it through the cinematic all the way through, again, that helps creates that sense of immersion for us, you know. And then for testing this stuff, we had these cinematic gyms. The tech artists would go in, they'd pick up a weapon and then instigate like the intro of a cinematic and just see how that weapon looked in their hands. And again, two-handed weapons was the way to go for us. You know, those are the majority of the weapons that we had. So then we started creating rules for how we were going to deal with weapons. Like, for example, if they need to have their hands free, we make sure the character puts the weapon away before they transition into a cinematic and then back out again. They can take the weapon out. Those are some technical things we had to play with. But the two-handed weapon was most important. So what we made sure we did was that if you had a pistol in your hand, we made sure you put that away or switch to a two-handed weapon before you got into a cinematic. If you need to have a two-handed weapon in the scene, we had a priority list for that. Or we also got gameplay to understand if we needed to drop a heavy weapon, that would be the thing we needed to do. So they don't try and carry that into a cinematic, because that definitely gives you a different style of animation for making that work. This was our best case to do this. And here, again, animation was testing how these weapons look as two-handed weapons. As you'll see, I think in this one shot here, like, it wasn't without its hardships. These are kind of things we just kind of had to shoot around because, you know, heck, our weapons are big in Gears, you know. And speaking of big, we then took a scene from Gears 4 and decided to stick some of our biggest weapons on the character to see what it would do to our camera angles. And as you can see here, this is going to be a problem. You know, if we want to have that kind of persistence in the game, but we still want to have our intimate shots and over the shoulders and such, then this is going to be a problem, you know, and we don't want to lose that. We don't want to just be framing around those. But then how can we make sure that we're looking out to make sure we're being persistent with whatever weapon you have in the game? Well, we did that by creating this. It was called the layout weapon proxy. It was then for our layout artists to then put these on the characters' backs and then know where these weapons were going to be in the shots. And then if we decided then if we needed to animate a weapon bone, attachment bone, or socket and move it down out of shot or out of frame during a certain shot, we could do it. Or if we need to just hide it during the one shot, and that's something a task that animation would do. But at least it gave us a good proxy to know what kind of issues we might run into with any kind of weapon we had in the game. And that's what we had here. We used to call these our turtle shells because it looks like a big turtle. Looks like a big turtle shell on your back. All right, and the next thing we had to handle was actually performance. Now, our target was 30 frames per second. The game on Xbox One X was actually 60 frames per second, but we were targeting 30 for cinematic, so we could at least get depth of field, motion blur, all, you know, incredible looking lighting. We wanted to make sure that the cinematics looked good, and I was happy to stay with 30 on that. So when we're looking for performance, you see all the data there on the screen. That's mostly for lighting, visual effects, tech art, and even meshing. You know, you have to make sure that we're not going over budget to make sure we can maintain that frame rate. You know, managing object and texture memory, that's important to make sure we're not loading things in the background that don't need to be there. Or we have a texture that isn't repeated anywhere. Maybe we can find something to replace it. We had to help manage that. And at the same time, animators had to find ways of pruning animation that weren't in the camera cuts or weren't in the shot that you saw specifically. Because if you have an animation loaded, it's just taking up room and space if you're never going to see it. So there was a lot of maintenance the team had to get used to doing to make sure we maintain performance, in loading and actually playing this back on Xbox. I also spoke earlier about our review tools. In fact, to be able to review this on Xbox, well, our tools team made this great viewer in which we were able to actually load up the game and then watch one of the cities play back in real time on the Xbox and then control it. So here we are using a controller. We're able to pause the scene, jump back to the beginning, start playing it again, fast forward to another section of it, and then pause it, and then start going frame by frame forward and backward. It just basically gave us all those tools we would have as if we were using RV or some sort of video review tool for looking at these cinematics. But now we're actually able to do this on the Xbox itself. And that's important for us. Again, we're always trying to see what our final output looks like on the device that we're making it on. And so it was great to have this kind of tool, at our fingertips, so to speak, to actually go and review our scenes on the device that we're shipping on. That's really important, because then we can compare lighting. We can make sure that there aren't any problems that we might be seeing in the editor or on PC. This is actually giving us an accurate output on the device. Okay. So I've been talking all about these technical issues and such, and these were the hurdles the team had to get through to actually, make all this outstanding content for the game. And so with that, I want to show you some of the work we did. This scene right here is called Burned Up. It's about 4.5 minutes long, and this is one of the ones where I'm going to show it, and I'm going to back off and let you guys watch it and enjoy it. If it doesn't look good, go watch it later on. You can go find it on YouTube. Like I said, our fans love putting our stuff up there. You can go find the scene there. But I'm going to show this because it's really one of the most exciting 4.5 minutes in the game. It has a great dynamics in the performances that has tension in the beginning, and then it ramps up to all this crazy blockbuster effects toward the back end of it. Great music score. And again, it's a great example of what our team was able to accomplish in real time on Xbox. It helped us get a nomination for the 2020 Annie Awards and the Visual Effects Awards. And because of that, I'm so happy to show it off for the team. So here you go. I'm going to sit back. Please enjoy this.
So, Del, see any friendly faces you recognize? Maybe that's the peaceful protester who broke my nose.
You deserve worse than a broken nose.
Why don't you show me what I deserve?
Stop!
Enough of this shit!
You're a goddamn coward!
A coward? Wow. Well, have I got news for you?
Pause. Don't.
Guess who ordered the first shot, Del? Directly into those peaceful protesters of yours. Yeah, that's right. Lieutenant Pedigree there.
Guys. Come on, guys. Look, I mean, they were throwing incendiary... The whole thing was confusing, all right? I didn't mean to have it happen. Never mind.
Beep, beep!
Cavalry's here!
Look, we can discuss this later. Come on.
Double time it! I need to get these people out of here! Shit, we're blocked! On trucks! Back up! Back up!
Bear, we're gonna lose the convoy. We need the hammer.
What now?
It's ready to fire, right?
Kid, I don't even have the coordinates.
Well, use me.
Are you nuts?
Maybe. Distract my armor and offset.
No, I'm not doing that.
Too bad, Baird. We don't have a choice.
Grenades!
covering fire! Bert, I'm almost there. Get ready.
I really don't know about this, kid.
There! Now! Fire! Fire! Woo! See? I told you it'd work. Baird! Baird! What's going on?
Can't control the... Iris, shut it down! Shut it down! God damn it! Just run!
Oh no. Move! Move! Move!
Shit! Everybody out! Everybody out!
Damn it, get out of there! I got you! I got you!
Again, incredible work by the team. I'm really proud of everything they did with this, from the animation, layout, cinematography, visual effects, lighting, meshing, sound design, and production, all working together to create a scene and cine content in our game. Here's some before and after of the work showing the different stages that we had. And again, remember, all this content that we're making scales up between an Xbox One and an Xbox One X, even to the Xbox Series X. So again, this is all scalable from one downloader, from one disc. So again, incredible work for the team pulling all this off. And one thing I always love showing these different breakdowns of the layers is the fact of how much work is involved how much work is involved in actually pulling this off, you know, and making it work, and seeing how all this stuff looks as it grows. I mean, here's actually our storyboard process, showing the shots of the Hammer of Dawn. We actually have some previs and some key shots there, and they all came out in the final game. Here's some early techniques we were trying to work for the Hammer of Dawn. How was that going to play and work in real time? And then I just love showing these scenes in general because for me, I love to see the process of these things grow as they mature, especially this scene here. For me, it's always like seeing like an early layout phase, then to when it's implemented in Unreal, and then we have our final camera motion in there. Gosh, it just adds a whole new layer of life to it. It gets me excited seeing that. I love it, and that's why I like showing it off to you, because again, I'm very proud of the team and all the work they put into making this happen. Okay. So let me come back to something I talked about earlier, and this was in-engine creativity. I talked about our opening credits being something we had to actually send to an outsourcer to actually create for us and create a rendered movie. Now, the way this got greenlit was actually us playing around in engine with some ideas to come up with a concept for this. You know, we were trying a couple things like doing storyboards and some early previs, and nothing was really latching on. So we decided to play around in environments. Now, we were still using Matinee because, again, we started production on this back in 2016, 2017. And we decided to just take some animations from Gears 4 and start throwing something together in an environment that we had, an engine, and see what we came up with. And there was a guy by the name of Sam Irwin who was really good at making previs or making cinematics, what we call Frankensteins, where you just take elements and put them together. A lot of us got really good at making that kind of stuff in Unreal back in the early days. And so here's an example of that, where we did we just conceptualized the stuff in engine. It's not what we finally went out with, but at the same time, seeing the stuff in the environment, seeing it lit, seeing it with some effects, just seeing it on meshes and stuff that's flushed out, it starts giving everyone a better idea of what we think we want to do. And at least, if anything, it gets people talking a little more than storyboards do. You know, sometimes seeing stuff like this is better than seeing something in a gray storyboard concept. So that's great, because in the end, it really helped propel us to then say, hey, I think we can make something incredible, and then go talk to Elastic and have them create an incredible opening sequence like this. And so again, it was just an area that we dabbled around in, but it was fun going and creating an engine that way. And a lot of people are doing that a lot more now. You're seeing a lot of that happening since the beginning of the pandemic. People are playing around in engine and creating this kind of stuff. So it's a real thing. Now, here's another scene we had in which Kate has to actually face this creature called a matriarch and kind of get inside her mind. She's trying to find some answers. She's trying to find out what happened to her mother from Gears 4. And this AI creature named Niles has actually, AI computer named Niles has lured her into this machine called the Mind Device for her to kind of go deep in her head and connect with this creature called the Matriarch. We need to figure out what that in-head moment was going to look like. Here's a couple of shots of the final scene. It's kind of muddy, it's kind of dreamlike, but it took a little effort to kind of get us there, with that, again, we went through the whole process of doing storyboards and trying to come up with some ideas, but no one really knew what we wanted this to be. The creative director wasn't quite sure. We weren't really sure what we were going to do. I didn't want it to be some black void or something really simple. I felt like we wanted to have something that had some substance to the game and the story and the tone that we were doing. So the storyboards, unfortunately, were too big. The scope was too big. And so we then started playing around with some previs. And so here's some early previs done in Maya. Same thing, scope was probably too big for what we wanted to do. It felt too out of character for what we thought, this moment should be. But again, we didn't really know what it was going to be. So I said, hey, let me go to the mocap stage. Let me capture a couple of things with our actors. There's actually some of the real-time play in Motion Builder of what we got. And I said, let me just take this motion. Let me do what we did the opening credits. Let me go in Unreal and play around. So we did. We had this environment. I was able to take it and then stick the motion in Unreal. And this is in Matinee, the older tool. And I actually went in there and I went and shot this stuff myself. I said, I just want to kind of get a feel. I want to go in there and play. I like to say it's my art film. But in the end, I went in and I lit this and I lit it kind of muddy. I wanted all this stuff looking a bit surreal. And it ultimately became a guide for our layout team to actually create this scene. And so this is what the final scene looked like. I'm gonna let this play through. The audio might be a little soft, but I just love the look of this. And I want you to enjoy it.
She okay?
She is fine. Patience.
Hey, Kate, I'm here. I'm here.
A little more to the scene. I'm gonna let it keep going a little bit.
Mom?
Well, Kate's done it now. She's woken up the queen, and bad things are going to happen. But again, I just wanted to show that to you. It was a lot of fun pulling that together. I like having a very surreal moment like that in Gears, outside of all the warfare we might have in the game. So to me, I really just wanted to show that off. I think again, the team did a great job pulling that one together. So are you ready for a surprise? Because this right here was a surprise to us.
We are what you could have been. You might have her body, but you're not my mother.
Go, now!
We are a complete being, connected, immortal. You had a choice, and you squandered it. Alive or dead, you belong to us.
Oh man! So we had a choice moment. This is something we hadn't originally planned for, but about a year before we shipped, they decided to put this in. We knew there was a character who was going to die somehow in the cinematic, but then they decided, let's make the player choice. Who are they going to save in this? And so now we have this branch, this choice moment, which meant the last couple of scenes in our cinematics might branch. How are we going to solve this? Well, first of all, we actually had to create a choice branch. So then depending on the choice you made, you had result A or result B. And then here's the two different outcomes, how they played back to back. And they're pretty much the same scene. We just got smart and reverse some animation, reverse a camera angle so that we could actually have the same performance and reuse it for both to make this work. It helped cut down some of the time we had in putting this together instead of actually having to reshoot the entire thing. Same thing here for the choice result, whether you save Dell or you save JD, who's reacting to it. Again, the reaction from Kate is still the same, but we had to reanimate the voice for the characters in this moment here with Kate afterward. So again, it created a new scene we had to make for it, but at the same time, having a choice and be able to branch is something that real time gave us an opportunity to be able to do easily. It wasn't so easy when it got into the storyline with Marcus, because then we had a scene afterward where Marcus reacts to the death of that person. So if he's reacting to the death of his son in choice A, he's having an emotional reaction. But if he's going up to console his son JD because JD's best friend Dell died, that's a different reaction. So now we actually had to author two different cinematics that would then play. And again, this doesn't really hang so much on real time, but this was just something we had to then put into the game to make sure that we could have these two different branches. But the fact that we didn't have to render out two separate movies at least meant that we didn't have at least double movies for the last part of the game for going out. Otherwise, we probably would have for something like this. Now, I'm going to talk about this scene right here. It's the return of Coltrane. Everyone loves Coltrane, one of the most loved characters in our scene. This was him making a return in a grand fashion, and I'll give you a little insight afterward of what we did for branching. So I want you to watch it, but actually Real Time helped us out with this one because depending on your player choice, you had to see that other person in this scene. So I'm going to let you watch it, and I'll talk to you about it afterward.
You remember me? Now's the fun part, bitch! Back in! You're goddamn... Oh, when I said the fun part, I meant fun for the Coltrane, baby! Oh, what the... No! Cole!
Everyone, into that Minotaur! We'll cover you!
Look!
You know I ain't going out like that, baby! Cole, what are you doing? I'm buying you some time! Get out of there, Cole! Good idea! Oh, shit! No!
Go! Go!
Okay, I'm going to keep things moving. I see my time is running out. But with it, what we had to do for this was that if you watch, you either saw Cole or JD. Now, JD was in the version that I played for you. All we had to do was a mesh swap. That was easy for us to do. So again, we had one scene, but doing a technical swap of the mesh is all we had to do then to compensate for that. Again, Real Time gave us the opportunity for that. But then what do we have to do for our ending cinematic? We're going to have two ending cinematics? Well, no. We decided we wanted to have some way in which we can play the entire scene, and have that choice be reflected in the ending cinematic. So how are we going to do it with a music track underneath all of it? Well, we decided that we're going to take a certain number of frames and we're then going to resolve it in each one of those. And depending on what you chose is what you got. So here's our ending. And by the way, Cole was okay. So he made it out that last bit. But here's Kate's looking over and seeing that something's happening over the ledge and there's somebody there, and it's either JD or it's Marcus. And depending on the choice, you have Dell going up to console Marcus or you have Marcus to console JD. And again, what we did, we had a certain number of frames that we used in there. One sequence actually has more shots than the other. And then we came back and resolved it as a group shot. And then on that last sequence, we again just did a mesh swap because none of the characters had any lines. That made it easy for us at that point. Unfortunately, we crossed the line of action with Marcus in one of these shots, but I was happy to go that route because, again, this was something we had to actually come in and fix toward the end. And that's a decision sometimes you have to make when something like this is thrown at you. So with that, what's our conclusion to all this? For me, this is what we learned. Accepting and embracing change helped us grow. Going real time helped us succeed. There's a lot of stuff in there we couldn't have done if we weren't doing it real time. Ongoing R&D helps the evolution, and team means everything and everyone. We couldn't have done it without this amazing team that we did. So with that, how did we influence change? Well, we influenced it with Gears Tactics. The team that made Gears Tactics, leaned on what we learned from doing all this stuff in Gears 5. We had some good tech artists that then took that opportunity to make sure the scenes ran in real time on PC, and then again later on Xbox. But then our team had some fun doing this.
Now, I've made promises to the COG, and through my people on the mainland, I've made promises to you. Complete the objective, and I will deliver.
Whatever the mission, sir, we're in.
What?
Okay, this is the Gears 5 expansion pack we created. It's the Hivebusters expansion DLC. It tells us the origin story of Lonnie, Keegan, and Mac, the heroes of Gears 5 escape mode, thrown together as Scorpio Squad on their first operation of the secretive Hivebusters program under Colonel Hoffman, if any of you guys remember that character from Gears. So again, the team had a fun time making this. I mean, it was a fun extension to do. It was an extension to get us to flex the muscle of all the real-time work we've done in Gears 5 and to do it again in this DLC. So everyone felt a little more confident about doing it. And we also pushed the frame rate on the cinematics to 60 frames per second on the Xbox One X. So that was awesome. We had great character moments. Like this one with them going in and they were angry at Hoffman, or actually Hoffman comes in and said, "Oh, hey, this mission was a failure." We're all mad at one another. We had these great character moments which we could go in and show off the character performances. All this was done PCAP for this scene, by the way. It was great working with Jamie Allcroft, by the way, who plays Colonel Hoffman. First time for me to work with him on a mocap stage, and he was great at doing all that. But then it also allowed us to do action sequences like this. Let me show you. This is called the chase scene. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, I'm going to continue on. I want to make sure I get a little time for you guys for questions at the end, so I'm probably going a little long here. But with that, our scope is always, when we're scoping on cinematic, we're always scoping on what we have based on the script, for the action and the complexity. And one of the problems we ran into was our story scope was pushing it in the DLC, and we had to find ways to make this work for our cinematic budget. So one of the things I decided to do was I said, let's take the last three cinematics. They're taking place in different environments. And so let's make them into one scene. And what that means is that we actually have to change environments in the cinematic. Now, it's something we hadn't really done before with our own team. It goes back to talking about using all those elements, but now we're the ones getting to use all those elements for what we wanted. So I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take those last scenes. It ends in the boss level. We're going to make a custom music track, and we're going to start in environment 1. We're going to transition to the interior of Hoffman's lab, and then go back to their the first mission that the team had as Scorpio Squad for the escape mode. And we're all going to do that in a montage. And again, the team took the skills they knew for making all this work, and they made it happen. And so here's that final montage.
Put up one hell of a fight. You think it'll live?
Yeah, I do. It's a good day. Everyone survives.
Ready for this, Scorpio?
If I don't make it, I want you to know, it's your fault, and I'm gonna fucking haunt you.
How's your nerves, Major Howe?
Oh, to hell with my anxiety. This time, I'm the surprise.
See you on the other side.
Again, so proud of the team. So proud of the team for pulling that off. It was great to have a music montage. Everyone likes a montage, right? So that was awesome. And so I hope you really enjoyed learning about how our Cinemax team took on the challenge to accept change. You know, we needed to adapt. We knew real time was the way to go. We embraced the change for the better. We knew we were going to learn and grow from it, and we did. And then with that, we ultimately influenced the change and how we're now creating Cinemax for the Gears franchise and all of our future content creation. So that was important for us to get through that hoop and actually go in and understand how change was important to us. And with that, I have one final message. I really thought I was going to have to do something to try and influence this team to actually go through that change. And here's somebody like, there's a couple of pictures of me here. That's not the skinny guy you saw back in those 1996 pictures in Brazil. You know, a lot of bad habits led to me being up to 380 pounds. And I thought maybe if I could do something like maybe lose a lot of weight, I'd help influence this team to actually make this change. Well, the thing was, I didn't do it, but the team did it. And it really was not, they handled it with ease. I didn't have to influence them at all. And I was so joyed by what they did. I decided to take it upon myself. And last year, I ended up losing 80 pounds. And this was my scale in September of last year, under 300 pounds. And I got myself down to 292. So that was huge because, and I'm trying to maintain it. I'm working on it. You know, I'm wearing gear shirts I could never wear before, but it was important for me knowing that I wanted to influence the team to change. But for me, influence is reciprocal. It goes both ways. You give what you give back. And I just want you to know that I think that's very important. So the team is just scratching the surface. We know how to make real time now, but we're still a work in progress. We're still trying to figure out where we can do the best real time work. But now we can actually call ourselves a real time team. And I think everyone's proud to say that. So with that, I want to tell you, thank you very much. And I appreciate so much letting me be here for this today. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was amazing. Thanks to Greg Mitchell. Please don't forget to share our link to our channel and tag your friends to also participate in Big Festival 2021. We come back in a few minutes. Please stay with us.
Big Festival 2021, the biggest games festival in Latin America.